Hotep family, it's brother Beniti Amun Ray back for another post. What we're going to talk about in this post, because I've been getting a lot of emails and from classes and lectures I've done, people still kind of get hung up in this, or lack of understanding of this whole extraterrestrial phenomenon, the evolution, our creation, and the connection in our DNA of why we're here. Let's dispel the myths on this. I talked about in the last post opening, or how these scientists are playing around with trying to open a stargate by recreating this Big Bang, by opening portholes and dimensions and letting in other beings either exit or enter, because that's what a stargate is. It's a porthole or opening to another dimension. And the question you have to ask yourself when dealing with a stargate: are you trying to exit out from your point of origin, or are you trying to open a gateway in from outside your point of origin? That is the question. But what we have to understand, to get some clarity on this, there's been beings coming back and forth on this planet for millions of years. We have to understand that our planet is 4.5 billion years old. Okay, regardless of what ideology or faith or belief system that you hold, we know by using common sense and logic. And let's dispel this whole religious myth, and let's really get down to the essence and origin of our existence, what we evolved from, and the whole atrocity, and I stress that word atrocity, that religion has created mentally on the minds of people, and has made them so ignorant and sick and mentally diseased, because they don't have a full understanding of what this is really all about. So like I said, there's been beings coming here for millions of years. We know when we look at the biblical creation stories, we know that it's mythology. It's not factual. It doesn't add up. Their biblical creation stories go back just a little bit over 6,000 years. We know by basic science, through carbon and fossil dating, we know that the origin of human beings, okay, goes back well beyond 6,000 years. Okay, we have mankind, which is a clone. We're going to get into that. We have man and woman, which have souls, or are part of original creation when dealing with the original melanated people. Okay, you have human, which is a beast. These are all different genetic parts of our evolution that we have to understand, what perspective these things hold in place. Like I said, we've had many different reptilian species coming to this planet, draconian species coming to this planet, and these are the beings that control the fate of our planet, whether you want to accept that or not. So this has been going on for long periods of time. They've intermixed with our DNA. They've bred in with us. But when we go back to the biblical stories, to dispel the myth, when you're reading your Bible story, which you have to understand, we all, over the last 20, 30 years, it's been a big phenomenon. You have a lot of people talking about Nibiru and the Anunnaki, and that whole story, and how it connects to us, and how it connects to the biblical stories. Many people, such as Zechariah Stixon. You have many different conscious and committed communities talking about it. You have many of the great Egyptologists, such as Dr. Ben, Dr. Jeffries, Dr. Clark. Dr. Blair breaks it down so elegantly, the whole Nibiru story. Another book I would suggest, and I'm going to take some information out of there and quote it, and I'll also quote some information from Dr. Delbert Blair, and some from my own personal research. You will find out a lot of very fascinating information on the topic, but a book that you should definitely check out is by Andreas Paris, and it's called Planet Gold, The Christian Forgery. And this whole Bible story really is a conglomeration or of different stories that came from Babylonian and Egyptian texts. But it's the story of a group of beings called the Anunnaki. Okay, and when you're saying the Anunnaki, all you're saying is those who are new sent to Earth in 50s to the planet Key. These were beings or extraterrestrials, aliens, whatever you want to refer to them as, whatever you need to get you through the day, that came and excavated this planet for one key element that plays an important role in this whole situation, which is the gold. Okay, what is the fascination with the gold? Even today, we're going to tie it in, and we're going to kind of break it down to what we call monatomic gold. And I'm sure everybody's heard of monatomic gold by now. It's been a big topic in the conscious community for the last several years. What is the fascination with this monatomic gold? What does it do? And how does this tie into our evolution story and our creation story and the so-called God, or I should say gods, of the Bible? Okay, let's flip back here for a minute. Let's go, and I'm using the King James Version. Because sometimes when you're teaching, you get some religious fanatics that, because they're so uneducated on their own Bible, they think you're using your own Bible or some special translation. I'm not using any special translation. I'm using the King James Version of the Bible, the most popular mental slave Bible that's in circulation today. It keeps people dumbed. So every quote that I give you, you can look up on your own, and word verbatim how I'm reading it is how you'll see it in the King James Version of the Bible. Let's go real quick to the 2nd chapter of Genesis. Okay, let's go to verses 11 and 12. And what I want you to grasp here, and I'm going to jump around to a few quotes because it's going to kind of tie it and explain to what I'm saying. There's this fascination with gold even before the very creation or existence of humans. Okay, and then let's start with verse 10, chapter 2, verse 10 in Genesis. It says, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison. That is which compasses the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone." Okay, then it goes on to name the other rivers, the 4 points. But it mentions a point here in Ethiopia where the so-called narrator of the story, whether you want to call it God or whoever, takes the time to point out gold in that part of the region during this creation process. And not only just any gold, he identifies the gold and says the gold of that land is good. I find this odd. Just in the middle, when you read the whole chapter, you'll find that this is just bluntly inserted in there. But there's an importance of this. Okay, you'll find out when you read the Sumerian text, or you do research on these beings called the Anunnaki, you will find out that their purpose for coming to this planet was for the mineral gold. The reason for the mineral gold was for multiple purposes. You read in some of their texts that they needed the gold to create a gold dust layer to protect their ozone layer from the 3 suns that were destroying their planet. Okay, that's one. The other reason that they really came here for and excavated the mines in South Africa for the gold was for the healing properties of the monatomic gold, or the white powder gold dust that they condensed through alchemical processes into a gold dust powder. And people know that study alchemy, anybody that's conscious knows if you intake this monatomic gold, it's like a superconductor. It makes you less dense. It opens you up. It increases your psychic abilities. It increases all proper brain wave functioning. And it increases clarity. They call it the elixir of immortality. When taken in certain traces and levels and certain different Ethereum levels of gold, it increases an overall correction of your junk DNA, for lack of a better word. Okay, so basically it was the nectar of the gods, which brings us to another story. What was that story really about in the so-called Garden of Eden story? Did they really eat an apple? Was there a serpent? No, that's fictitious and metaphorical. But there was this secret brotherhood of gold called the Anunnaki that came here and wanted to raid this planet of all the gold. And then they created, in their text, a Lulu Amalu out of the very own essence of their DNA. They were Lulu Amalu, means slaves or slave workers. And these individuals were basically created to work the minefields on this planet for that gold. Okay? You will find out when you do the research that your Yahweh, or God of the Bible, is none other than the Sumerian god Enlil. Okay? You will find out that Enlil was the spearhead who Anu sent down here for this whole gold project. And this is not fictitious. This is a factual story. There are beings here that left only in the 7th century AD. That's how recent that they left and stopped excavating for the time being for this gold. Okay? And it was for the purpose of the healing properties, like I said, that this gold was able to conduce. Okay? We as Lulu Amalu, some of us, okay, were cloned out of these beings. And this is why I say that's one aspect of how we have DNA of some of these extraterrestrial beings. Okay? These are one group of beings that came and scavenged this planet. That's one part of the story. When we're dealing with the beings that are the biblical God, the deities or the gods of your Bible, your Yahweh, your Elohim, your angels, whatever you want to call them in whatever language, we're talking about that group of beings that's responsible for your biblical stories. This is why when you read your Bible, this Yahweh or this Enlil requires supreme allegiance to him. And when you don't give your supreme allegiance to this deity, then he threatens you with punishment, death, doom, and destruction. When you read this Bible, there's nothing but death, destruction, and bloodshed all throughout it. There's nothing but war, fighting, disease, plagues, prostitution. There's nothing holy about this book. This book is basically about an alien god that had a plan to come to this planet and scavenge it for gold, but he did not want to teach the Lulu Amalu, or the humans he created, about the secret properties or the mystical healing properties of this gold. And that's what the war was in this Bible between these gods. Because remember, he confesses in Exodus, I am a jealous God, have no other gods before me. So that's confirmation he was in competition with some other deities or gods. You'll see that he was in war with his brother Enki. Okay, getting into another story. Contrary to what you believe, you're taught that Enki was, quote-unquote, a disagreeable one. I'm not going to get into a whole breakdown of all these beings, but we will talk about some of these so-called Sumerian characters that you read about in these stories, because they play an important part in this whole brotherhood of gold, or this whole secret conspiracy to cover up why they came to this planet. And they created your modern-day religion to keep you dumbfounded, confounded, and confused. So this is why all these rules, laws, and regulations were set up. All these religions to this day are still being enforced by these beings that were here thousands upon thousands of years ago, and we're still enforcing their alien laws to keep giving them credence, power, and control. Okay? So you'll find out you're reading a story of two sets of beings that were in disagreement, because the descendants of Enki were more compassionate towards human beings. They were trying to aid human beings and teach human beings about this monatomic gold, okay? Including Enki's son Marduk, who would be equivalent to Ra in ancient Egypt, which that's a whole other story. We'll get into that another time. He was the one who married the first human, or one of the first extraterrestrial that came from this whole project, to marry a human, Serpent, the female. And that created a lot of conflict between the two brothers, Enki and Enlil, because remember, Enlil, main job when you read the stories, he was on his gold mission. He was focused on that. And he didn't want any interbreeding with humans, and he didn't want them to have any awareness of this gold, whereas the descendants of Enki felt otherwise. So you're seeing a war between these deities take place. Now it gets a little confusing, because when you read the stories, they're kind of mixed in, confounded. The characters and the names are changed according to the language when some of these deities plagiarized these so-called stories. Okay. What I also want to point out, I want you to look this quote up, back to the monatomic gold. And I find this quote one of the most interesting quotes in the Bible, that when you ask a religious person, they really can't give you a factual answer to this quote. They'll dance around it. They'll give you their interpretation. They won't be able to make sense of it, because without having knowledge of who the Anunnaki were and this whole monatomic gold and cloning process, you wouldn't be able to answer this question if you had no knowledge of it. So as usual, they give their incorrect interpretation of it, because they're being misled themselves, so they don't know no better. But if you go into the book of Exodus chapter 32, okay, let's start with verse 19, okay, and I want to read 32 verse 19 and 20, okay, real quick. Alright, and it goes on to say, and it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands, and brake them beneath the mount, or broke them beneath the mount. Now what this is talking about, we've all read in the past the story when Moses was up on so-called, and I'm going to say so-called because they haven't proven this story to be factual, was up on so-called Mount Sinai, receiving the Ten Commandments. The children of Israel became impatient, as the story goes, and they decided to build the golden calf, Hathor, which ties into the Egyptian deity Hathor, and there's a connection with who the Bible calls Moses, the Thutmose, the first of ancient Egypt. That's getting into a whole nother story, because I said it gets confusing because they took Egyptian characters and Sumerian characters and they kind of intertwine them when you read this Bible, so it could get a little confusing if you don't do your research, because your flood story with the being they call Noah in Genesis is recorded in multiple different cultures in Africa and various other parts of the world, including Samaria, in the Atrahasis under the character of Utnapishtim, which that gets into a whole nother story. So Moses comes down from so-called Mount Sinai. The children of Israel became impatient. They built a golden calf. Watch what Moses does. And he took the calf, meaning Moses, which that they had made, and burnt it in the fire, the golden calf, okay, and ground it to powder. This is very interesting. And strawed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it. That's right there in your Bible. Why did Moses take that golden calf and ground it into a powder, or a monatomic form of gold, and then liquidize it? There's also liquid gold, okay, which is a connection, and then made the children of Israel drink of it. What was he trying to do here? What does this story mean? Now, when you ask the average religious person that's completely engulfed in the ignorance of faith and belief, they're going to give you every witch but whacked out interpretation and explanation of this, okay? An alchemist and anybody who studies the Egyptian mysteries can easily answer that question, okay? We know why you put gold into a powder form or liquidize it and drink it and ingest it, because we know the healing properties of that gold. So obviously this so-called being in this story saw that their spiritual capacities or their mental faculties or their connection to their ancestors was out of whack, okay? So again, an alchemist can answer this question. I want to point out that quote because I want you people watching this that are conscious and deal with the metaphysical aspect of things. These are the questions I want you to pose to people that believe in this nonsense called the Bible, okay? So again, I get a lot of questions in classes and lectures I do. It's sad, but obviously sometimes we have to go back and revisit this because our people need it. Some people just can't leave the Bible. They're just not getting it. And as long as you stay confounded to this book of dead people, of fictitious dead people, I should say, your spirit becomes dead. Because we spend so much time and energy fighting over a book of dead people that didn't even exist, when we get up every day and we walk out our front door and we create the book of the living. You understand? Every day you get up and walk out your front door, you create a page in the book of life. We need to focus on the now. Okay? So I want to clarify this whole biblical story of creation is what we're focusing on. We're not going to get to the whole Bible, because we got into this whole, we're just talking about the creation story and the first couple of books in the Bible. We're not even really venturing in to where a lot of these stories came from. We can start from all your Old Testament characters all the way up to your New Testament characters, including Jesus, and give it a full breakdown on that, and maybe we'll do a post on that. But right now we're focusing on our creation story via the Bible, which some people still can't get out of their minds for whatever reason. And again, what kind of sparked me to do this post was a lot of emails I was getting on the subject, and some people get confused with the characters. And I'm going to read one from one brother that sent me an email, which I found very interesting. Okay, let me pull it up here. And this is where you can get, I don't want to say lost, but this is kind of where, if you not understanding the stories, it can get a little confusing. Okay, let's go. Let's go to this here. The brother was, again, under the assumption, and I'll make a long story short, and then we'll move on, that, you know, Enlil was the agreeable one, and that Enki was the disagreeable one. Now, that can get confusing because you had beings from both lines of descendancy, Enki and Enlil, that took different sides on the matter. But when you go back and look, you will see that Enki was the one who showed more compassion for the humans. He was more interested in educating them to what was going on, as opposed to Enlil's descendants. Now, you had some people from his side that sided with Enlil and vice versa, so it can get a little bit confusing. Now, as stories were passed down from culture to culture, these beings were also recognized in Egypt under different names, such as Patar or Tar, whatever title you need, Amun-Ra, like I correlated earlier to Marduk, and we'll get into that another time. But it gets a little confusing when you're not understanding who these characters were. And when you have the understanding that these were stories grafted from many different cultures that predated the Bible, you know, then it becomes confusing. But when you know it's not confusing, you will see that the beings mentioned in your Bible, because it mentions a group of beings, it's always in the plural, and there's always a third party narrating this Bible. And I always ask religious people, who's speaking? Because it's not God. For an example, even the Quran speaks in the third sense, like there's a third party. Now, who's narrating this story? Now, again, you can give all the whacked out interpretations you want. Let's just stick with common sense. Common sense, when we put it to the common sense test, it doesn't even pass the test. So long story short, your creation story, okay, goes back to these beings. Your creation Bible story, I should say, okay, goes back to the story of the Anunnaki and why they came to this planet to rob this planet of all the gold they could, and used you as a slave to work the minefields to gather this gold. Now, they also set up laboratory and bases in Mars, and they transported it from Earth to Mars, from Mars back to their home planet. Okay, this is a fact. That there's a connection with the face on Mars and the pyramids, because a lot of these sites were used as landing markers. This is how they were able to know where to land. They left markers, so when they flew in their crafts, they were able to land them at certain spots. And it also represented the project that they were working on. So there's a whole connection there with Mars, the pyramids, the Anunnaki, Egypt. There's a whole connection there. And you'll find too that the Draconians and the Reptilians, who worked in conjunction with some of these bands, there's a connection to that now, DNA. And I want to quote something that the great Dr. Blair said. Even when you go to Egypt in the Step Pyramids or the Ziggurat Pyramids, you can see the serpent symbols on some of the step pyramids. Now we know back in ancient Egypt you had a group of beings that came from the water called the Ogdoad, and they were the reptilian beings. When you research that, you'll see the reptilian connection even connects to Egypt, not just Samaria, and not just to the Anunnaki, because then when you take these water beings to the lineage of the Anunnaki, now you have to go back to the fish deity Dogon. Now watch this. If you look at Dogon, he's depicted as half fish and half man when you see some of the depictions of Dogon. Now when you look at Dogon's the bottom of a fish, or the tail, look at the mitre, as they call it in the Catholic Church, that the Pope and the Cardinals wear. Look at it closely. That is a fishtail. They are telling you that they worship the deity Dogon, and they are connected to this alien brotherhood, and they are part of the reptilian agenda, and they are the priesthood and servants of the Anunnaki enforcing this spell of slavery, mentally and physically. Okay? Again, look at the mitre, M-I-T-R-E, go research it, that the Pope wears. Look at the top of the hat, it's a fishtail. Look at the hat that the Cardinals wear, it's a fishtail. Go pull up an image of the Sumerian deity Dogon, spelled D-A-G-A-N-O-O-N. Okay? Go look that up and look at, he's depicted as a half man, half fish, and look at the hat that he's wearing. Take a close look at it. Do that research yourself. Then that ties into, again, I want to jump around because it opens up portholes and doorways to other information. Then that ties into when you go to the Dogon of Mali, West Africa. What's the connection there? The dog star. Dogon, D-O-G-O-N. The dog star, the beings that came from Cyrus, that connected to the beings in the water called the Nomos. Let's talk about that for a minute. Again, all going back to the Serpent Brotherhood. Okay, the Nomos were beings that came to the surface in Mali, West Africa, and in exchange for mixing with their women to try to have sex with their women and produce children, they would teach the people of Mali, West Africa, about the mysteries of the universe, about astrology and astronomy and creation. In exchange, they would allow these Nomos, or these reptilian beings, to mix with their women. Today, you have a byproduct of those beings that still show genetic defects from that mixing, called the ostrich people. Go look it up. They have big webbed feet. So they have reptilian-looking feet. Now, every year in Mali, West Africa, not every year, excuse me, every 60 years in Mali, West Africa, the Dogon tribe, which is a tribe there from this whole mixing in or experiment, they reenact a rite called the Boldo rites every 60 years, or which they call a Sigi, commemorating their contact with these water beings. So if you think that this is a myth, there's a connection with us and our existence with water and reptilian beings. And this all ties into the Anunnaki, Dogon, your Catholic Church, which basically is the priest of Dogon, or Enlil. And like I told you, your Enlil is the God, or your Yahweh of the Bible. And basically you're reading a story of how you were enslaved and how a bunch of laws were enforced upon you to keep you controlled and ignorant to the reality of the truth that's really going on. That's bottom line. That's the reality of it. Now, you don't have to believe me, because I couldn't care if you did or you didn't. That's not my job. My job is to be an awakened. Okay? And that's what we do. We just teach and we awaken. And we're not interested if you believe us or you don't. Because if you don't, you know, or can't relate or accept this information, you just haven't raised yourself up to that level. Because you'll never understand this if you stay confined to the realm of faith and belief. You'll still be under that spookism of that there was some God, some old man in the sky with a long beard, sitting up in heaven, snapping his fingers, and he created everything and he controls everything. If you want that kindergarten story, that's fine. If you want the reality, and this is why I always say you're either part of the experiment or you're controlling the experiment. If you want the reality to who and what you are, you will find out that you are a DNA ancestor of these beings. Like I said, extraterrestrials have been coming back and forth to this planet for millions of years. Okay? Like I said, you also have had beings that come here for multiple different reasons. And I've said this in previous posts. Now, we are living in a day and time. Having said that, because again, we can expound more on this further, because there's a lot more dynamics to this. We just scratched the surface. We're just basically touching the surface. I'm getting you to see your creation story in your Bible. You've been lied to for many, many years. It's not what you think it is. These deities or gods of the Bible are not who and what you think they are. The more credence you give to them, the more life and power you give to these reptilian forces and these draconian forces. It should say on the back of your dollar, "In gold we trust," because now the big thing is gold. You see people, all these infomercials with, give us, donate us your gold, and they'll give you cash for gold. Why such this urgency now to collect and buy gold? Now, is it that our ozone layer is depleting here, and somebody needs to create a gold dust dome or biosphere to protect them, non-melanated beings, from the direct rays of the sun? Is that a possibility? Because in the last 3 to 4 years, there's been this huge craze for the exchange for gold. Because what happened there now is happening here. Because, like I said in other posts, get out of your mind that these beings are some alien monster extraterrestrial beings. These are the highly evoluted beings that look like you and me. Remember, you also have shapeshifters, okay? And another topic that has come up and brought to my attention, you have melanated beings on all different levels. You have some with an abundance of melanin, some with a bit of melanin, some with low traces of melanin. How do we determine who the original beings were? Because a lot of people always ask the question, and the original beings that first came here would be your original dark-skinned melanated beings. That's a scientific fact. But you have to raise yourself up to the awareness of these beings are able to shapeshift and take on any form, any race, and any gender. You will never be able to understand that until you raise yourself up to the awareness by activating your pineal gland and being spiritually awake. Now again, you would know that back to the monatomic gold. That's one of the benefits of taking the monatomic gold, because it can raise you or increase your psychic ability or your higher senses and connect you spiritually to what we call the cosmic consciousness of all. Okay. There's much more on the monatomic gold. And another question you get, what's the right kinds to take? Well, do your research and find out the Ethereum gold, which are different trace elements of the gold, is the best kind to take. But do your research on any of these companies. I would personally recommend one of the companies that Dr. Delbert Blair uses off his website, themedicenter2.com. That's the number 2. His Ethereum or monatomic gold, the companies that he works with, is a good company. So if you're looking for a reference, I would definitely endorse that. There's many healing properties to this monatomic gold that was connected to your creation story. Because when you read those Anunnaki stories, why do they center around this mineral called gold? And like I pointed out to you, I wanted to point out 2 simple quotes, because those that know me, I can read this Bible front to back and break down all the stories in there for you. But I only do that when need necessary. We're in a stage of our evolution where we have to raise up to a higher level of spiritual consciousness, because this book constantly keeps us enslaved mentally, and it stunts our DNA and our evolution spiritually. Excuse me, because a lot of people get caught in it. They can't get out of it. And again, it's not a knock. And this is why I'm addressing the topic, because I want people to have an understanding that when you break down the spookism excuse me, of that story, it takes away all the misleading information that's been put in those stories. So again, I mean, I'll elaborate more on the Anunnaki and that story down the line. Now, let's finish up with this. In this day and time, we're in 2015. We have to understand all the phenomena that we see going on, the cataclysmic events. What I mentioned in my last post, CERN, these European nuclear scientists that are trying to recreate the Big Bang Theory. All this is happening because these beings have to get off the surface of the planet. They're no longer welcome here because Earth is going through changes. And what you have to understand is, as Earth is changing, those that don't change with it, they're going to have to go. That's the bottom line. So those that don't belong on the planet, or those that do not have a soul, can no longer stay here. That's what you're seeing. We have to get out of the hype of all these doomsday things people have promoted over the years. The end of the world. My thing is, the end of what? You can't end existence. Existence just is. Cycles constantly happen, and they constantly reproduce themselves. So there's no end to anything. Okay, when you are the supreme or the infinite, there is no beginning and there is no end. Okay, and we've always existed. We always were. We just or we've always been, whatever term you need, and we always continue to be. So you got to understand, those whose energies are not conducive to the vibrational rate and frequency of this planet, especially as we are going, and I'll quote again my good elder Dr. Delbert Blair, from into third and fourth, which we are approaching, and now into a fifth dimensional existence. We have to be prepared for that. Okay? Now, these demons at CERN, and like I mentioned in my last post, who use also the deity Shiva in the Hindu pantheon, the god of destruction, they are always trying to figure out the God particle, dark matter. They're always trying to figure out the very element, essence, and origin, or the very fabric of creation. Because these are the same people who, they don't even believe in their Bible stories and their religion and their faith and belief systems, because they know their faith and belief systems lack the true wisdom and understanding to clarify and explain these things. That's simple. So now they're going to science, and most religious people will say science is evil. Science is against the Bible and religion and God. But yet here are the same people going to science now for the explanations to the mysteries of creation of humans and the universe. But it goes deeper than that. If you don't believe, or you don't accept the reality that there's beings working in conjunction with these draconian forces that control this planet, they're trying to do everything and anything to basically get out of here now. Now, the reason why I posted that last post was, what is the effect that this has on our planet and our consciousness? Well, again, it deals with energy being emitted into the universe. So are you prepared and ready and receptive to be able to receive that energy and assimilate it? Because however you intake it and ingest it is kind of how it's going to be reciprocated back out. If you absorb the negative aspect of it because you're not prepared, then it kind of transforms you into what we would call a negative or a malevolent being. So they're trying to incite, okay, different energy changes on this planet. Now, you can't do something like that and not realize the repercussions it could have on the magnetic grids and energy grids of our planet. So then when you look at it from a metaphysical aspect, this is a dangerous thing that they're playing with, or as we use the term, they're trying to play God. And it's very, very dangerous, because this, again, could definitely offset the very balancement of nature and the planet. Because we know, when dealing with what you want to call, has been multiple Big Bangs or explosions, we know life forms out of these explosions. So even out of chaos and confusion comes law and order. But when you try to usher in the chaos and confusion, that's a whole nother story. So these demons don't quite know what they're playing with, unfortunately. But if you are in line and doing what you're doing, then you have no problem, okay, being able to stay in tune. Like I said in the beginning, nature is changing. As long as you're moving with nature and changing with it, you're fine. But once you go against nature and you're adverse to it and you're not changing with it, guess what, my friend? You got a big problem. Okay? Gonna stop there. Make a couple quick announcements. If you are watching this post and if you see it before Thursday, the date of this post is March 3rd, 2015. On Thursday evening, we will have Dr. Delbert Blair on our radio show. And again, the name of that radio show is Awakening Universal Minds, or AUM. It's on TalkShoe.com. You can go to the search engine, go on the home page of TalkShoe.com. Again, that's TalkShoe.com. And just type in AUM in the box, or Awakening Universal Minds. The show will come right up. That show will take place this Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can see or listen or participate in the show. Dr. Delbert Blair will be on that show this Thursday night. You can call in and ask him a question. So we'd love you to come tune in. If you want a link to the show emailed to you, you can simply email me at khnum19@gmail.com. Again, that's khnum19@gmail.com, and I'd be more than happy to send you the link. And again, also for those in the South Florida area or wherever you're coming from, want to invite you out to this Sunday. I will be in Miami Gardens at Sophia's Garden of Ma'at. I'll give you the information on that and the contact information if you are watching this video and you are able to attend that event and you're in the area, or you're welcome to come from wherever you want to come from. It is free. There is no charge for the event. We just ask that you support. There will be books there for sale, vendors. We just ask you to support the event. Again, no charge to get in. That event will take place. Let me pull this up real quick. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up on the phone here. Just give me 1 sec. We'll pull that up. I'm just going into this. That event will take place this Sunday. Okay. At 7 p.m. And again, that's going to be in Miami Gardens, Florida. The address there, if you want to write this down, is I'm sorry, pulling it up. 3450 Northwest 169th Terrace, Miami Gardens, Florida 33056. If you want more information on the event, you can contact Brother Yehuda at 786-357-1899. Again, I will be there, Brother Beniti, this Sunday at 7 p.m. until. So come out and support that event. We got the show Thursday night with Dr. Delbert Blair, so definitely tune in for that. And we're on every other Thursday night. You can personally come on there and ask questions. You can participate, or you can just listen. And we cover pretty much every topic above and beyond the sun. So, having made those announcements, I want to close again. We're living in a phenomenal day and time. Okay, what appears to be negativity all around us is not negativity for those who are spiritually awake, because it's a blessing in this day and time to see the changes that's going on. All the stuff that our ancestors talked about years ago, we're alive and witnessing it today, and we are going to be the individuals fortunate enough, those that are here, to see this transition take place before our very eyes. So it's not a great and great and dreadful day for us, like these biblical religious people are constantly promoting the end of the world and doomsday. For us, it's a confirmation through nature that our ancestors are here and they're working, and we see the manifestation of that every day. when we walk out our door. We see it every day on the news. We see not only is the planet and nature going through changes, we see the effect it's having on human beings. And human beings are going through drastic changes mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And it's on two levels. Those that are not absorbing this energy and assimilating it, they're going crazy. They're picking up guns and shooting people. They're hearing voices. They're doing all types of crazy stuff. Those that are preparing themselves are the ones that are moving in sync with nature. Having said that, we're going to stop here for now until whatever the ancestors inspire me to do on the next post. And we hope to see you on the next post. And all I can say is study, do your research. Don't believe anything anybody tells you. Do not follow anybody that claims to have the exclusive truth on anything, because that person has something to hide, or they're running a hustle and a scam. Don't belong to no Mickey Mouse clubs. If you say you're a god, a deity, and you're spiritually conscious or awake, be a living example of that. Okay? And you'll never be able to be deceived. Okay? So, having said that, this is Brother Beniti Amun Ray checking out, and I will see you people on the next post. I apologize, I might have yawned and a few times here and there, a little bit tired, but hey, the work of the ancestors is never done. It's a continuous work that happens 24/7. Hotep, family.